the ultimate question is, how did you get from being at Yale School of Engineering, and it was mechanical engineering, correct?
Yep, Emmy. Yep.
To being a chef?
Being Chinese, growing up, one of two sons, uh, we literally had no choice. You had to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer. That's just ingrained in your DNA. And like Jewish culture, like lots of immigrant cultures, education and respect for the elders is paramount. So it was all about get into a good school, study something that's going to get you to be a doctoral engineer, and then you're going to have an awesome, fruitful life. So I did that path, and I certainly was more scientifically oriented. I did much better in math and science than I do in the other SAT categories, English and prose. So I gravitated towards engineering, and like everything I've done in my life, when I got to Yale freshman year, I took every possible engineering course I could take. I wanted to just get through this and just do engineering. And so in ME 185, introductory engineering, I made my first swim meister with my friend, a swimming device that looked like the way man from Atlantis swam. You put a big fin between your legs, and it actually worked. And so I started doing that. Concurrently, though, you have to realize that at age 15, I started cooking professionally at my mom's Chinese restaurant in Dayton, Ohio. So I was the manager, the rice cooker, the janitor, the egg roll cart boy. I was everything, and um, got the restaurant bug early on. Got the you can make good food at a good price, serve with a smile. You can make people happy through food, and that's why we do restaurants, right? That's why I'm a chef. You can make people happy through food. So I love that. But again, I'm 15 and 16, and I'm like, okay, but let's get this higher education. Let's figure it out. And um, little did I know that that love of pleasing people and making people happy through food was going to be ingrained in my DNA. So I get to college. The first summer, my dad's partner of his company called Think Composites. My dad is a rocket scientist. He's working with everyone. Airbus, NASA, this new plane called OTTO. You should Google it. It's this cool plane that can fly at 65,000 feet. It's going to be the least expensive, environmentally friendly private plane. Probably hit the market in a couple of years. So my dad at 91 works full time still, and so the bar is not too high there, right? And so his partner Thierry Massard, who's now amazing. They've been great family friends. I'm the godfather of their first son, Sebastian. So really close family friends. Free place to stay in Paris. So I go there to master French. I went to Alliance Française because you have to speak French if you're going to work, with the goal to work in Paris. And so that first summer, I just did apprenticeships. I went back every summer, sophomore summer, junior summer. So after junior summer, I went to Cordon Bleu, the chef school there, 3-month program. And that's when I realized, damn, the French can cook too. Because up until that point, it was Chinese, Chinese, Chinese. And I immediately thought, you know what, this is something I can do. I could do Chinese French food. I could do Frenese, French Chinese. Frenese, named it in stick, is now called East West cuisine or fusion cuisine. But I knew that I had something that I had the two best cuisines in the world, not quite under my belt, but a good foundation on it. All my Italian chef friends, and of course Japanese friends and Spanish friends, they wouldn't agree with it. But for historically, French and Chinese are the two most fundamental cuisines: Chinese for Asia and French for Western. So I came back junior summer, so now it's my senior year. I sit my parents down, and it really wasn't a shocker. I said, look, I'm not going to be an engineer. I am going to finish. I'm going to get my bachelor's, because you spend a lot of money, and it's silly not to get your bachelor's. Plus, it was easier to get the bachelor's than switch majors. And but I want to go to Paris after I graduate and cook. And my mom, if you've seen my shows, gives me a huge hug and says, honey, that is awesome. You're so lucky at your young age. You know your passion. Follow it, give 110%. We wholly support you. Which is, keep in mind that I'm first generation, right? My parents are born in Beijing. My parents came to this country to get a higher education, to do anything but cook, because the cooking job was the only job available to all the male Chinese immigrants after building the railroads and after the gold rush. You had hundreds of thousands of Chinese, which is how San Francisco Chinatown formed. And the only métier most of these people had was cooking. And so that's how Chinatown started. So I do all this awesome, I go Andover and Yale and this and that, and then I want to be a cook. So the fact that my parents were just very cool parents and understood that the happiness of their kids is more important than their ingrained in the fabric of being an immigrant, thinking what we should be, they chose let's have happy children versus what they thought. So that I'm blessed, and you are what your parents are, right? For the most part. My dad, in the same conversation, didn't say anything. Who's much more pensive. Again, he's a rocket scientist,
Right.
and he goes, "Son, you weren't going to be a very good engineer anyway. Go cook." I'm like, wow, Dad, that's rough.
Uh,
But his point was, if you don't love something, you can't be great at it. There's no chance. If your passion is not behind engineering, you have no chance. And but come fast forward, and believe you me, it has helped my career immensely on twofold. As you know, if you know how to do a spreadsheet, you can then analyze numbers. So I was a chef that busted out P&Ls and spreadsheets and really looked at financially how you could be successful in the restaurant industry, because it's ultimately, it doesn't matter how good your food is. There's so many awesome chefs that are bankrupt within a year. It's the numbers. So I could always, and still do, think analytically about numbers. Doesn't matter if it's a restaurant or whatever, any type of company. And two, because of my relationship, I started, I guess it's almost year 7 with HSN, Home Shopping Network. I started designing my own restaurant equipment. And that was very cool because PV equals NRT, and everything I learned in thermodynamics and fluid dynamics actually applied, including centrifugal force and angular acceleration, everything I learned, because there are different ways of cooking stuff. And that became for HSN and me my niche. So it is so embarrassing, but every time I go on HSN, every host would introduce me as mechanical engineering Yale major turned chef. Ming Tsai has come up with this, and it gave credibility and credence as mostly honestly icing and sugar coating, but there was some basis to it because I actually do have an engineering degree. And that, you in life, I don't care what your job is, you're looking for a differentiating quality. Why chef? Why should I buy Chef Size air pressure air fryer machine where Curtis Stone and Wolfgang Puck have a similar one? And it's usually price and function. However, if there's a background to it, and once you build a good fan base, and fortunately through Simply Ming, I had a fan base. It was a great formula for success.
how has your experience helped you as you developed Ming's Bings? And if you probably first tell everybody what Ming's Bings are
Yeah.
my see that's my
So
weakness in my grammar. So if you can share that, and at the same time, other people with specialties, any chemical engineers, or the whole process and the people that you had to bring in to create what you're doing now.
yeah, so Ming's Bings, and please go to mingsbings.com. It's been a project I've been brewing on for years, and it came to fruition literally 1 month pre-COVID. So I didn't know COVID was happening. No one did. It looks on paper as genius that Ming Tsai pivoted because of COVID. In actuality, I did it the month before COVID, but so glad I did, because with one or two of my restaurants closed, it gave me an awesome project to focus on. So Ming's Bings are really the first vegan veggie patty that's filled with whole veg. If you go to the Whole Foods of the world and you go check out the vegan patty market, you got Prager's and Boca's and Gardeins and probably 10 other ones. They all look the same. They're all these dried hockey puck, emulsified chickpeas or edamames or whatever the grain, or whatever the or quinoa or whatever it may be, the starch, right? They add protein to it. Sometimes it's nuts, sometimes it's seeds, sometimes it's fake meat, whatever it may be, but they're not very good to eat. You have to eat it with lettuce and tomato and avocado on a bun. And all the pictures, funny enough, of all those brands I mentioned are all photo of their patty with lettuce and tomato and avocado in a bun with sausage dripping down. And so it became my mission to create a veggie patty that was different. And I put the emulsification on the outside. So instead of emulsifying and having a binder, and sometimes that's egg, I wanted to make it vegan, so eggs are out. I decided to put the emulsification on the outside, which is a wrapper. That was the most technologically advanced thing we did with Ming's Bings, because gluten-free poses many challenges. Without gluten, which is, obviously the structure that keeps stuff together, that keeps bread nice, chewy, pasta, um, it can keep a wrapper together and then crisp up really well. It's harder without gluten, but through much experimentation and knowing the properties of sweet potato starch and tapioca starch and potato starch and rice flour and brown rice flour and all that, we just started experimenting. We had a machine that I'd never seen before at the manufacturer. It's Anko machine, which is this, like, I guess it's 8-foot diameter wheel. It's a heated wheel that goes around, and you add batter. You put batter in down at like 7 o'clock, and as this batter gets spread on the wheel goes up, and the wheel is hot and it cooks. So it goes from 7 p.m. and it comes out at 3 p.m. and you scrape it off, and this beautiful sheet comes off of it. Then it's cut. That's my gluten-free wrapper, and we are still we're still iterating, and we'll be iterating for years on this, because it's a really great wrapper. But we're trying to figure out what other natural stuff we put in. Is it some type of guar gum or xanthan gum or something to even seal them better? So you're always constantly trying to make your product better, right? And the filling is basically a Woxerd filling. We had many complications with that, which is a lot of water leaching out of the watercress when you add sodium to it, which is our tamari powder. So we had to figure out the best way to put that together, because at one point we were losing 30% in water once the mix got to us. Once we made the mix and it sat, which is just not attainable. You just didn't make money on your Bing. So we finally figured out the best way to combine everything. And next steps, right now I'm currently designing a mechanical flipper machine that can then, right now we're hand forming our Bings, right? We have 10 of these amazing Asian ladies at this factory, and we do like 40 Bings a minute, and it works, it's efficient, it's expensive. And so the next iteration, but you have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to build a machine. And so I'm talking to the engineers at Anko to create the machine that can, it's a very funky way of folding. It's not like a spring roll because they're flat and square shaped. But we're making great inroads on it. So you're always looking at the process, right? Processes matter. And now it's about where are we inefficient and where can we be more efficient. And because at the end of the day, with any product, you have to keep quality where it's at, because that's what the customers are expecting, but you have to drive costs down, right? You can, of course, just do more revenue, which is great. Economies of scale always works. If you start selling 1,000,000 Bings, your price is going to go down for shipping and this and that. But ultimately, how you make it, what it costs, how many man hours or man minutes are spent per Bing is your real cost. Labor is your biggest cost, right? And so that was a thought process. And we literally launched last week nationally. So now you can buy it. You can buy it online. Go to mingsbings.com. We send it nationally in 12 and 24 packs, and we'll be in grocery stores starting Q1 next year. I guess the other engineering process I did do is, and this is me as a chef, having been on TV, having coached and watched lots of home cooks. There's some great home cooks. There's cooks that could be chefs, and then there's the rest of us that barely. I've gone into people's homes and turned on the oven, and I smell plastic because they never had turned on the oven in 5 years living in their new home, right? So there's those people too. They're like, "Oh, you're supposed to take the plastic out?" I'm like, uh-huh. A lot of Americans don't cook. It's not like Europe and Asia. Everyone learns how to cook in those countries. You just do. It's sustenance. It's how you survive. America, a lot of America, we have fast food, we have prepared food, we have lots of other frozen foods, and I'm one of the frozen foods. But my idea was, how do we do it so that my execution of my Ming's Bings and his and hers are the same? One of the biggest, and I'm guilty of it, is when I write recipes, I say, I always say, coat the pan with oil, grapeseed oil, canola oil. Coating the pan with oil, and I admit, it could be 1 to 3 or 4 tablespoons, depending on the person coating the pan. Because you can't say coat the pan to 2 angstroms, because first of all, no one knows what an angstrom is, and 2, you just can't say that. There's no ruler that measures an angstrom, right? So lightly coat the pan is what I usually say. So I took the guesswork out. I've I have I have the way I wrap it, there's nooks and crannies on the side that actually traps a little oil. So we dip these in oil. And by dipping in oil and then freezing them, when you pull them out, you never add oil to your pan. And you also need this is something that we're challenged with, because immediately when people see oil, they think not healthy, and that's true, right? If you're eating a lot of oil, that's like eating butter or cheese. It's not healthy, right? It's mostly fat. But you have to cook with oil, right? There's no way you can cook a stir fry or anything without oil, unless it's Wagyu beef that has 60% fat. So by being pre-oiled, I took the guesswork out of it, and we say take a cast iron pan or a thick pan, cold. Take your frozen beans. You don't defrost your beans because you don't want the water to leach out. Put your frozen bean in the cold pan, turn it on medium heat, and don't touch it. Because in 6 to 8 minutes, the oil starts to render off, the cooking oil. And then that starts to slowly coat the pan. And by 8 minutes, that side, which has now been defrosted, is going to get nice GB&D, golden brown and delicious. And then you can flip it. And then that process repeats. And then that side, the oil renders off. So what you end up with is a perfectly brown bang on both sides. You flip it a couple of times. Ditto for the oven. If you put it on a sheet tray, no one oils their sheet tray before they put something in, right? So again, in a sheet tray, you put your bangs at 425, and in 10 minutes, you'll see the oil start to render off. Ovens and air fryers are the best way to pick it up because it gets the sides crispy too. So then 10 minutes in, you'll see the oil start to slightly coat the sheet tray. You flip it over again, then more oil coats it, and then the bing is crispy, golden brown, ready to go. You dab it on paper towel, right? Just like you would, French fries or anything that has been seared. You tend to dab it. Even like when we cook in restaurants, we piece of fish we take off the grill, or we usually pat it on a towel to take off that little bit of residual oil. Take off the cooking oil, and then you have your bing. And air fryer is by far the easiest. Put them in 14 minutes. You don't think about it. You don't touch it. You don't flip it. Air fryers are awesome. So again, building into the process of a frozen food to take the guesswork out for the home cook. And again, that has been very helpful. I think 90% are like, this is awesome. I don't have to the response. We've gotten thousands of responses already. 90% like, this is awesome. I don't think that. I love how crispy it gets. It's amazing how crispy it gets in an air fryer, in an oven. And none of that would happen if there wasn't this oil. Things just don't crisp up by themselves, right? You need fat to crisp things up. And that there's 10% like, oh, how can this be health food? There's so much oil. And of course, in my head, I'm thinking, are you licking your cast iron pan and your sheet tray? Don't eat that oil. That's cooking oil, right? That oil is used to cook. And you're right, there's a coating of oil, but you're not supposed to eat that oil. And again, people don't realize when they go to a restaurant or someone's home, they're cooking in oil. You just don't see it, right? Here you happen to see it, and I think people immediately gravitate, oh, it's oil, it can't be healthy. You're not eating the oil. That oil is to make it crisp. So that's a challenge, but again, 90% favorable. I'm not that worried about the 10% because I know, and I'm going to cook some other new flavors. Literally this morning, I just got some new flavors that we've been developing. I'm going to do the exact same technique. What I have learned is originally the Bing was 5-sided, right? I wanted to make it 5-sided. I used this Bonchong wrapper, rice paper wrapper. Looked really cool. It cooked really well, but a pain in the ass to use. You had to dip it in water. So that slowed us down by 50%. And a 5-sided item could not be automated. The machine to do a 5-sided item would have just been such a slow machine to flip something 5 times. So I switched gears and started thinking, and this is from my next iterations too, what machines exist out there today? Because if you don't have to retool, you could save hundreds of thousands of dollars on machines. So I started researching through Onco and other companies, what is out there. You probably do or do not know this. There's machines that make everything. There's a Blintz machine. There is an empanada machine. There's a machine that makes samosas. There's machines that make dumplings, of course. So my next iteration, like when we do, for example, Bing Bites, so mini Bings for hors d'oeuvres for the next holiday season, I'm not going to dictate it has to be this shape. I'm going to dictate, give me every die this current machine uses, and there happens to be a square one. And we're going to use current machinery and just make sure how we fill it, it's delicious, and that the wrapper, it could be a batter, it could be a dough, is also gluten-free and delicious. So adapting to what exists out there, because tooling is just astronomically expensive, and 6 months to 12 months to get anything. So there's the
Still,
timing of it.
even with all the additive manufacturing and metal 3D printing, et cetera, you're still looking at it. It makes me think that we have still so far to go in additive manufacturing or subtractive manufacturing that we still have to make a great die, and we're not at that phase yet in technology.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about the dice. It's people have, it's like a pasta machine. You have your 50 different pastas, right? And I mean, these machines are so advanced. I mean, most of the dumplings you're getting frozen are all machine made, right? They all are. And so there's been great advances with that. But yes, to your point, yes, there's 3D printing and stuff, but that all costs money,
Right.
right? It's money and time. And right now, it's a boon. Restaurants are dying. Manufacturers are thriving. Right? They're an essential business. So every food manufacturers, or not every, but everyone I know of, are really really busy, right? Because they're just trying to get food out for their frozen food shelves, because a lot of people are eating at home.
I was curious to know if you had any mentors that have helped you along the way, and how you met them. Were you introduced to them? Did you go up to them and say, "Hey, I'd love for you to answer some questions I have on my career," or anything like that?
Yeah, I've had many mentors. I mean, going back to college days, there's this guy named Sam Chauncey, who is just still one of my great friends. He's very, very tied into Yale squash, which is how we met. I think he's single-handedly has written more recommendation letters than any human being on this planet. I mean, hundreds is a year for graduating seniors trying to get into whatever. It could be recommendations for a job. It could be recommendations to get into grad school. He did one for me for grad school. He is now my son's mentor,
Oh my
actually, even faculty advisor, to be honest, at Yale. So it's just it's gone full circle. And so he was certainly not my first. My first mentor is my dad, and to this day remains. And just just not only work ethic and study and do all the stuff that any normal dad or mom would say, but he was very big on enjoying the ride, right? And one of my best examples, and this is another reason I'm a chef, is food was a priority in our family. Italian, Mexican, Chinese, Jewish, same. Food is our priority, right? We do everything. It doesn't matter what we do. We always talk about what we're having for dinner. And at dinner table, we talk about what we're having tomorrow night for dinner, right? It's food, 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 food. And so, like the first time I went to Paris, I was so excited. I'm going to the Paris Air Show because my dad's an aeronautical engineer, which is in itself an amazing experience. And but we didn't have a ton of money. He worked for the Air Force, civilian. He was a civilian for the Air Force. His chief scientist. I mean, we were not poor, but we weren't wealthy. So we would stay at Hotel Rinky Dink. We'd literally stay in a hotel that had the bathroom in the hallway, and two double beds. And so the four of us, my brother and I, we'd be in the same room. The front door would hit the double bed because they had to add the other double bed into this room. So it was puny. But we did that so we had enough money to then go to a Michelin 3-star restaurant, right? The priority was eating great food, not sleeping. And you could sleep anywhere. Um, and that's the way I was brought up. And that's the way my dad always said it's important to live as large as you can based on your means. So did we have 4 Michelin star meals? No, we had one spectacular one. And that's where we blew all our money. And the rest, Now having said that, at the Paris Air Show, we got into the chalets and we ate just fine. My point is, he prioritizes what's most important in life, and he sticks to that regardless of anything. So that to me is so key. You have to live today, right? Tomorrow I may not be here, so live today. And he always said Harin Halbal. My grandfather, his dad, said it too. Harin Halbal is basically good things happen to good people. So
Mm.
take care of people. Take care of especially the people that work for you. My dad was very big on, you know, you can. It's great if your bosses like you. It's much more important that the people that work with you and the people that work below you like you, because they're the ones that are going to bring you to the top, and they're the ones that are going to laugh at you on your way down if you didn't take care of them. And I see it. My dad has more friends around the world, colleagues in every major country and city. And like for example, at his and they we just had a huge um, event for my mom and my dad. 70 was it 75th 70th anniversary. Anyway,
Oh
people from
my God.
all around the world showed up: Japan and China and Europe and Australia and this, because that's how my dad. That's
Oh,
how he ruled. He would always take care of people. Even he would always take his students from Stanford or wherever he was working and had he's a tenured professor, and he would get them to be the first time they've ever been to Europe or the first time they've ever been to Asia. And then these people are fans for life. And my dad could go into any city in the world and have a place to stay. And I think that rubbed off me the most. So so dad versus mentor, Sam Chauncey at Yale, and then lots of chef mentors, right? I mean, Ken Ham, who you may not know, most don't know. He's very well known in England. We're similar. He's older than me, but he's Hong Kong born, trained in Paris, and he does East West cuisine. And he when I was working together at Silks, he was a consulting chef at Silks, the Mandarin Oriental Hotel in San Francisco. We were cooking together. He's like, hey, stick to this style of food. Stick to this East West. There's very few of us that can do what we're doing now. And it's not a trend. It's here to stay. You're going to see Asia keep opening up and chefs are going to start grabbing every Asian ingredient technique. And he was spot on, right? This is 20 plus years ago. And, Thomas Keller, Jose Andres, Ken Oranger, they all do new American, new Spanish, new French, and you call it different names. They're all doing East West. Everyone's grabbing white soy sauce or refined sesame oil or this aged nori, and they're bringing it into their own cuisine. So everyone's doing East West cuisine. The world is a melting pot, and so Ken was very instrumental. Um, Another chef is Kobayashi. He's a sushi master I trained with when I lived in Osaka. I got to do a stint in Osaka, and Kobayashi just really taught me the discipline of a Japanese kitchen and just the exactness of a Japanese kitchen, which is much more exact than the Chinese kitchen. I mean, it's to the exact. It's unbelievable how they wash everything down, how they break fish down, how it's if you're in a Japanese restaurant, you're making sushi rice for a year before you think you're doing anything else. And in the French kitchen, you're peeling potatoes and cutting onions for a year.
wow.
So every culture has their own similar, lowest on the totem pole. Um, and then a bunch of French chefs. I got to work at Fauchon. Fauchon, unfortunately, is now bankrupt because of COVID.
Oh,
But Pierre Hermé was the executive pastry chef, the youngest pastry chef ever to work at Fauchon, like at 24. He's still reputed to be the best pastry chef in the world. He just opened my eyes to everything pastry, and I got to work at Fauchon for almost a year, and everything that he did, exact, just exacting. Um, and I never trained with Robuchon, but Robuchon, again, one of the most, again, the word exact. He was the most precise chef and had 3-star Michelin. Of course, he's in heaven. He's one of the,
hmm,
unfortunately, 10 chefs that have died this year.
wow.
And he, funny enough, to the exact thing I'm talking about, his best, and he had restaurants all over the world. All of his chef de cuisines or exec chefs, almost all of them were all Japanese because he knew that these Japanese chefs could do. I mean, he had a plate that literally had 80 and 88 or 89. He had a number, I can't remember, but 89 dots on a plate, exactly equidistant from each one. They did a perfect circle, and that was the bell pepper coulis, whatever the sauce was, for a plate. And you just watch these chefs plating this up. It's unbelievable. And so Robuchon, just the fact that you can cook perfectly if you really try. And he did. And that was, the meals I've had at his restaurants is literally, the most perfect food. And so, um, yeah, I think those are probably my main mentors. And the ones that are still alive, obviously, I talk to often. Um, my dad even stuff. He does help. We were talking about my air pressure my pressure cooker I did, and he's trying to figure out. Again, he's an engineer. He's trying to figure out. Okay, so you should develop maybe a pressure cooker for altitude. So
Mm,
you're because I'm in Montana now. So if you're above a mile up, things cook differently, right? Again, PV equals nRT. So he's like, well, if you do that, you got to be able to lower the pressure. So he's a great cook. Both my parents are great cooks. So he's very interested in trying to help me as he's designing airplanes and missiles, to help me develop a pressure cooker, which I think is pretty funny. And so yeah, so I've been blessed. I've been blessed to have lots of people around me that help guide me.
You brought up a really great point about exactness, or I should say, opened my eyes to another intersection of science and cooking, and
Yep.
understanding measurement and an appreciation for um, geometry, and knowing that person could do was 81 dots and develop an idea for space and distance and the density of these fluids and all this. And you can really see how somebody who goes with a science-based education can apply that so many times throughout any career. And not everybody sees that. And that's kind of what I preach a little bit, is on the road of education, is that when I was younger, everyone was preaching about liberal arts. Oh, you don't know what you're doing, go liberal arts. But we have computers that write articles and check our spelling and check our grammar. And what we're still lacking are the people with the science backgrounds. And if people can get that as a base knowledge, then that is so applicable to so many different things. And again, reinforced by some of the finest chefs being able to have precision, and that precision is learned through measurement and temperature and understanding physics. So that is great to hear that reinforced of why people might want to consider a science-based education.